science enthusiasts. Welcome to Spaces Unleashed. Every week on Twitter, we bring an expert to chat live through the Spaces program. And this is bonus content that goes with the Science Podcast. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, Jade. How are you doing today? Or is it Service Pup Basil?
She's here, but it's Jade speaking. Sorry, I couldn't find the right button.
It's all good. I'm so glad you're here. A lot of people are excited to hear you speak because we're kind of going to talk about a couple things and then open the floor to questions. Jade, you are a paleontologist. Is that how you would classify what you are?
Yeah, I am. I'm a vertebrate ontologist, and I heard as I was getting on the spaces that you're talking about the spelling. It's funny because I'm from the U.S., so I don't add the extra A usually. It took me a long time to adjust to that extra A up here.
Right. In my title, that's like the British spelling for paleontology or paleontology. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just what my phone always tells me the American spelling's wrong. It's like, hey, it's wrong,
yeah,
eh?
Canadians have that. Yeah. Yeah.
So Jade, to be a paleontologist, what's your training and education right now?
So I'm finishing my PhD right now, and I have a Bachelor of Science and also a Master of Science, and hopefully we'll be done with my PhD this year.
Well, congratulations just for pursuing anything past undergrad. That's pretty impressive. I mentioned that when we chatted on the podcast, that's not the path I took in education. And I have a lot of respect for people that do that.
Thanks. It's a lot of school.
What got you into paleontology? Were you a little kid, and you just loved dinosaurs? Like, did you hit that dinosaur phase a lot of kids hit and that you just stayed in it?
That's an awesome question. I didn't quite hit just a dinosaur phase. I was into like all animals and rocks. I grew up in Appalachia, which is the rocks are too old for dinosaurs in the area that I grew up. But we did find lots of bivalves. They're kind of look like clams, but more distantly related. And there's lots of things like that and trilobites. And so I grew up kind of looking through rock outcrops and finding those things because my granddad was a pretty big paleo enthusiast, just like an amateur rock hound. So I got interested that way. And then in college, I just kind of stumbled upon a paleontology class and realized I could actually study any of these fossil animals for a living, and kind of blew my mind. So went from there.
The story makes me smile. It's so I love dinosaurs. Like when I was little, I know I love dinosaurs. I still love dinosaurs today. Where I live in the world, Alberta, Canada, we have this massive store of dinosaurs in southern Alberta.
Yeah.
We have the Royal Tyrrell Museum, which is just amazing. Where have you been with your PhD and masters to look for, like, you have to do field work, obviously, and we'll get to some of the challenges there, but where have you been to do your field stuff?
Well, I've been lucky enough to actually do some field work in southern Alberta, which was really, really fun. I got to do 2 seasons out there, and then hopefully I'll get to do another season. We had to pause last year and the year before because of the pandemic. But yeah, I've done a bit of excavation in southern Alberta and done some museum trips actually to the Royal Tyrrell and love it there.
Oh, it's so cool.
It's an amazing collection. And I've also dug quite a bit in Montana. And then I was very fortunate to do a 5-week excursion over to China.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was pretty incredible. We were looking for dinosaur eggs, which is what my master's was focused on. And that was a really fun field experience.
Do you, when you're searching, like this is like when I talk to other scientists and they discover something or they find stuff, do you find stuff and you just like are blown away that you have found a fossil on your dig? Like, does it ever get old?
It never gets old. It's always really exciting, at least for me so far. Yeah, I've found bits and pieces of things pretty frequently. In Montana and Alberta, I haven't been lucky enough to stumble upon like an awesome skeleton or anything like that. But I found bits and pieces, and then I've helped dig at quarries where there are large limb bones and articulated or partially articulated skeletons. But I did find some eggs in China where I actually found them. Yeah. And that was really awesome. It was an incredible experience to find not just like a few months, but actually find what was a partial left remains of a clutch, so a nest of dinosaur eggs.
It's giving me goosebumps. It's giving me goosebumps.
Yeah.
How?
Me too. Thinking about it again.
How big were? Can I ask some questions about the eggs? Like,
Totally,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I don't think we talked about this when you were on the podcast. How big were the eggs? Like, what dinosaur species were they from?
So these were actually fairly small. They were probably the size of like a closed fist, like a loosely closed fist. Yeah, and we're not actually sure what species they were from. It could have been a couple of different types. Eggs are interesting because they're hard to tie to one specific dinosaur. We know enough to look at the outside ornamentation, and you can look under the scope at the actual structure of the egg, and you can tell this is definitely dinosaur. Maybe it's in one group or another, but very, very hard to tie it to an actual species unless there's an embryo that has identifiable bones that you can figure out what species, but that's pretty rare. So we come up with a whole way of naming eggs that doesn't tie them to a specific dinosaur. So they have their whole naming system that's separate from like dinosaur names. Yeah.
Okay.
Like
that's cool. I guess I guess like unless an egg is an egg, it is an egg as of a dinosaur. I guess unless you find it next to some kind of evidence of like an adult or juvenile or baby dinosaur, it's tough.
It is, yeah. And the dinosaurs that I study now, there's actually one really cool thing about them is they're one of the few dinosaur groups that's been found with clutches of eggs really frequently. So we know what their eggs look like, and we know that they go with that dinosaur. We've got parents on top of nests. We've got embryos inside of eggs.
What?
Lots of really good evidence.
Oh, yeah. That's so cool. Embryos, like little. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. They're pretty cute. It's really rare, but there are some.
Okay, so that was my other question I'm going to ask is like you are studying a specific type of dinosaur. Your handle on your human account, not Basil's account, is O is for oviraptor. Am I getting that?
Yeah.
So yeah, could you talk to everybody like what is an oviraptor?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they're really funny dinosaurs. So they're a theropod dinosaur. That's the group that we usually think of as being meat eating. They run around on two legs. A lot of them were feathered. And theropod dinosaurs are the ancestors of birds. So birds are a living dinosaur species. So oviraptors are kind of a funny theropod. They actually don't have any teeth. They have a beak. Yeah. So they have a beak, and like some of them have crests on their head and they have feathers. Yeah. They kind of look a bit like a cassowary, but yeah, some are bigger, some are smaller, and they're just very silly looking.
So in a scale to a golden retriever, how big is a oviraptor?
Ooh, some of them were roughly the size of a golden retriever, but then you also have some that were almost the size of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Really, that big?
Yeah, there's one species that we know got really large, nearly Tyrannosaur size.
Oh my goodness! Did the big ones have feathers and a crest too?
The biggest one that we have I don't think it has a crest. No, it does not have a crest, but a lot of the kind of medium-sized did, and quite a lot of them are actually around the height of a person.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's kind of the average size of a lot of the oviraptor species.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So did they just use... I'm just so curious. So they didn't have teeth. So it wouldn't be as terrifying to put one of them in Jurassic Park, but they are meat eaters. So did they rip their prey apart kind of like a falcon? Like, like a bird of prey doesn't have teeth.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that's a really good question. So we actually don't know for sure. So there's a lot of debate about oviraptors. They're so weird. And this is one of the reasons I love them. There's just everything about them is debated. Their diet, their reproductive lifestyle, their everything. So some people thought they were herbivores, so didn't eat meat at all. And so maybe some of them were herbivorous, but there have been some found with like gut contents with like a lizard in the gut. So there's evidence that they did eat some meat, did hunt, but they might have been omnivores. So having a varied diet, kind of eating whatever they needed to. The name oviraptor actually means egg thief. So they have kind of a bad reputation because of their name. The earlier discoveries of an oviraptor were it was the skull found near some eggs, and there's just this assumption that the animal was eating the eggs, so it got named oviraptor for egg thief. But we later discovered that was actually its own nest.
Oh,
So
no.
yeah, it's actually a good parent dinosaur, and it's got this rap for like, eating those nests of eggs. But it
should be like called, fabulous goofball or something like that. I don't know how that would translate to dinosaur.
I would like that. There is a dinosaur that's name translates to good mother lizard.
Aww.
That's the Maiasaur. Yeah, and it's one of the duckbills that has been found with a lot of so that's why I got its name.
Aw, good mother dinosaur.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah.
So the second part of my section here is like, if people are listening to you, you're like, how come there's a dog profile talking about dinosaurs? Jade, if you're comfortable, could you talk to everybody? You do have a service dog, and you do advocacy for these.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking to everybody about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So Basil is my service dog, and she is still in training, but she is getting close to being finished with her training. And she helps me in pretty much every avenue of my life. So she does come to the lab with me, and she has all her own personal protective equipment and all that. But the reason that I have her is that I have multiple chronic illnesses. So I have several disabilities, but they mostly relate to an underlying disease I have. It's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it affects all the connective tissue in my body. So my joints don't really work very well. They dislocate and kind of come out of place really easily. My connective tissue is kind of like, if you imagine a rubber band that's been sitting in your drawer way too long, and you go to like get it out and use it, and you stretch it, and it kind of just stays stretched out. It's not very helpful. That's sort of what my connective tissue is like. And so that can cause a few problems, not just with my joints, but my heart rate also is hard to control. It goes way too high because your blood vessels have connective tissue in them too. And so my blood vessels are too stretchy. And so Basil will do a lot of things for me that help with all of the various symptoms that I have. One of the most important is her cardiac alert. So she can actually smell when my heart rate is starting to accelerate too fast, and she'll let me know. And then she will come over and put her paw up on me and tell me like, hey, that's her way of telling me your heart rate is way too high. You need to sit down or lay down. Yeah. So it basically helps me not fall over, because when your heart rate goes really high, you can pass out or you can just get really dizzy. So she lets me know before it gets out of hand, and I can sit down, and she'll actually lay on my legs. And the pressure of her on my legs actually helps regulate my blood pressure, and that brings my heart rate down.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so she's pretty amazing. But she does a lot of other things too. She'll open doors for me, or open cabinets. And she brings me water from the fridge and brings me my medications. And she's learning to do mobility tasks too to help me with my balance. So yeah, she's a multi-purpose service dog.
Oh, I love her so much.
Yeah, me too.
I shared some pictures of Basil up in the nest. Yay. Everybody. Yeah. They're just adorable. She's so her coloring is a little darker than Beaker's. I think she's a little bigger too. Beaker's on the small size for golden retriever. Beaker does not do much to help me with anything, so she's not as trained as Basil. Beaker's good at go get the bird if that was ever needed.
Yeah.
So do you have? That's one of the things golden retrievers have. they have a very strong prey drive. Like they were bred to hunt and get birds.
Absolutely.
And I believe when we talked on the podcast, like service dogs are like not every dog can be a service dog. They're like of the dogs, they're like a tiny percentage that could possibly go that route.
Absolutely. It's kind of like when you think about the Olympics or the Paralympics, the population of humans is really big, but the actual percentage of us that can do that level of elite competition is rather small. And it's really similar with service dogs. It takes a very specific temperament. And like you said, a lot of them are bred for things like hunting. Basil is actually a hunting line golden retriever. And that they often are that darker red, or at least there are more of those darker red ones in the hunting line.
Yeah, the coppers.
Yeah, hunting line. But her family line actually has a lot of service dogs in it. So the breeders who have been working on her lineage for quite a long time have selected for a lot of those temperamental traits that are good for service work, and they have a lot of service dogs that are very successful from the breeder.
Aw.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the protective equipment that Basil has to wear?
Yes, please. Absolutely. I love it.
Okay, so that's the profile picture. It's and then we're eventually going to have Samson service dog.
Oh,
On with Samson's mom, Joey Ramp.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I was talking to her earlier today. But like Basil has similar protective equipment that Samson wears. Is how hard was that to train Basil to wear that gear?
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought up service dog Samson and Joey. They are huge role models for us. So I had service dog before Basil. His name was Charlie. And I trained him on lab gear based on service dog Samson and the information that Joey was putting out there on the protocols for safety in labs with a service dog. So I actually used her work was pretty crucial for me realizing I could even have my service dog in a lab environment and then learning how to train that. So with Charlie, he trained as an adult, so it took him a little bit longer to get used to all the equipment. But Basil has been training with goggles and lab coats and boots and things like that since she was 9 weeks old.
Aw.
Yeah. it was really cute. I mean, it's still really cute, but baby Basil is adorable.
I know. Their little golden retrievers are they're just like a little drop of sunshine with bitey teeth.
Yep, little floof balls. Yeah, so she took to it pretty well. It does take a lot of consistent training, and we actually play a lot of games with different types of gear on. So she would start to associate it with like, this is a really fun time. Goggles are probably one of the harder things because it's on their face. I think there's just like an instinctual hesitance to that, but she is very used to all of it now. The one piece of equipment we're still acclimating to are her earmuffs, her ear protection. So got to do a little bit. She will wear them and she's fine, but she's not like happy and goofy the way she is with the rest of her equipment. So yeah, the goal is to get her so used to it that she is just her happy, goofy self with the equipment on or off. And we're almost there with the earmuffs.
Oh my goodness, like the earmuffs you would need because you do drilling, right? Like you have to jackhammer stuff and like pound it away and
Yep. And in the lab we use rock saws. So she wears her ear protection when I'm using a saw because I cut up fossils. So
because you want to see what's inside the bone or oh my goodness, I could talk to you forever about dinosaurs. I just love it so much.
It's really fun.
So just so everybody's aware, up in the nest, and if you're comfortable with me talking about your GoFundMe, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we share a GoFundMe once a week. Our account is quite big, and we help out dogs in need. This one's a little bit different. Could you just talk a little bit about your GoFundMe? It's not necessarily for your money for school, but it's for training for Basil as well, and then all equipment that you would need with your disability. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I have my health basically declined pretty badly in 2018. So I was partway into my PhD. And my health declined pretty rapidly, and it became much harder to do field work. I started needing a different kind of service dog, which is why I got Basil. I originally had a service dog for PTSD, but I needed much more complicated service dog work. So that's where Basil came in.
Mhm.
And I've been able to get by so far with the kind of bracing that I've been able to scrape together. But now I'm trying to get back into more activities that I still haven't been able to do. So back into field work, back into hiking long distances and staying really active, and also getting Basil her advanced training. So that's where the GoFundMe comes in. I am fundraising for extra mobility equipment that is better than what I have right now, so that I can move around more. It's been a really rough few years, and I used to be a very active. I was a backpacker. I did these paleo digs almost every summer, and hiked quite a lot. And the last few years has been very, very different. But I've found a really amazing bracing specialist and medical team, and they've helped me figure out what kinds of adaptive equipment would be helpful. And I also have been training Basil on mobility work, so that she can help me more. So I just needed to fundraise so I can actually afford all of those things. But yeah, quite a bit of it will go to training for Basil and more of the mobility equipment that she needs. And then the remainder of it is mostly for braces and crutches and things like that for me.
Got you. Well, we're happy to help, Jade.
Thank
I just
you.
thought we would talk about. I was going to post it this week, this weekend. I was like, no, we're having this space. We can.
Yeah.
Everybody's learning a lot about dinosaurs. We can, it's nice to raise awareness about what you might need some help with. So we tweeted that out, and it's up in the nest if people are interested. Oh,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah, no problem.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to our show week after week. If you want to know how to support the Science Podcast, here are a couple ways. It's always going to be free to download, so you'll never have to worry about paying for it. But, things do cost money running a podcast, and here are a couple ways you could help us out. One is join our Patreon page. It's amazing. It's growing. It's almost like an extended family. There's multiple tiers of support, and we have lots of fun perks for being part of our Patreon page. The other way you could support us is giving us an awesome review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, anywhere you can rate our podcast. Give us a great review. The third way you could support the show is checking out the BunsenBurnerBMD.com website. We have awesome merch there. We worked really hard finding quality merchandise that's comfortable with vibrant colors. And you'll find in limited quantities over the next couple months, maybe even less, the 2022 Bunsen and Beaker calendar. So 3 ways to support us: the Patreon page, 2, give us a great review, 3, head over to our merch shop and see if there's anything there you'd like. Thanks, everybody.
So we're at the point where if the audience wants to ask a question, you can. So, Jade, are you pretty comfortable with a lot of dinosaur questions? Should we keep...
Oh yeah, I'm up for whatever anybody wants to ask about. Dinosaurs, dogs, disability, anything.
Okay, perfect. So, again, I will double check. If I don't recognize you, I'll double check that you're following us. And if you're not, then I'll just kind of quickly check through your profile and make sure it's not like a troll site, because that happens occasionally with open spaces. And if you are shy, you can direct message the question to me, and I'll read it to Jade. And Jade, again, thank you for giving up an hour of your time to talk dinosaurs with us.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, Liz, you're up, and Paula, you're on deck. Go ahead, Liz.
Oh.
You just gotta unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, it took us a thing to connect. So I just have a dumb question to ask, because I like to ask dumb questions. So you have a service dog and she goes with you, I'm assuming, on the digs. How do you keep her occupied and not wanting to dig and chew on whatever she finds?
That's not a dumb question at all. I think a lot of people think service dog, and if they haven't been around one, they think of a pet dog experience, and that's a very logical question if you have pet dog experience. So, unfortunately, Basil hasn't been able to join me on a dig yet because our dig last year was canceled, and she is only 2 years old. So that would have been her first dig. It got canceled, but we will be going hopefully next year, and we have started training some of those skills both in her basic training, her lab training, and then I also do still camp quite a bit. It's mostly car camping since I can't quite hike as much as I would like to yet, but hopefully that'll change with some more mobility aids. But service dogs learn a variety of commands that you can kind of generalize to different situations. So she's learned to be pretty calm in like a camp setting. She learns different commands for instance, she has a command that is called settle. And that basically means she needs to lay down and be calm and not really do anything. She can play with a toy as long as she stays in one spot, laying down. But that's kind of her, oh, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait until mom releases me command. And we use that in the lab a lot. So in the lab, she can't really free roam either, just like she wouldn't be able to free roam at a dig site. She has to go to one spot and stay there. And the only thing that she's allowed to get up for is if she needs to alert me to a medical problem. And so that is a difficult thing to train, but she has been training as 8 weeks old, and she's doing really well with her kind of settle and place are the two commands that we use that mean stay in a spot and don't get up unless you actually really, really need to alert me. And so we would just use that. I have been practicing with that kind of command in camp, and she's getting there. It's harder in an outdoor environment, but she'll get there for sure.
That's an impressive feat for a dog. Like Beaker's in obedience training with now, or like whatever you want to call it. Like she's in doggy school.
Yeah.
And she's doing. We're so proud of her when she can like lay down and stay there for the count of like 30, right?
Yeah.
And this is vastly different where Basil's like gotta just chill for a long extended period.
Yeah, but we started the same way. It's the same training. You just we started with like 5-second increments when she was really little, because a puppy does not want to stay still.
No.
So just keep increasing it by like 10 seconds every time they get it really solid. And then you just increase it for 10 seconds for the next time. Yeah.
That's cool. It's similar. Bunsen was so good at staying because he would just because he was like, great, I don't need to move. This is my favorite and I get a treat. So perfect. I'll just lay here.
Awesome.
Liz, did your question get answered?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate the application of psychology to dog training.
Yep.
Paula, go ahead. You're up. Anybody else who would like to ask a question, please request the mic. If you are shy or you don't want to speak, and direct message me the question. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for taking my question tonight. Hi, Jade. Nice to see you and have you answers. And I'm pretty excited about dinosaurs too. So
Awesome.
I live in Connecticut, and we have the dinosaur sighting, findings here. Do you travel? Well, pre-COVID, did you ever, travel to the United States to study them also? And what's the coolest thing or the most misconception of dinosaurs? Is kind of a double question here, but
Ooh, I like it. I like it. I'm actually from the U.S., so I grew up in West Virginia, and then I moved out west to Montana to study for my master's, to study dinosaurs, because there's so many dinosaurs in Montana and Alberta. So yeah, I've traveled around the U.S. I've done mostly Western U.S., so Montana and Wyoming, and then also up into Alberta. And then also over internationally to China, so further. So yeah, I've done a bit of travel. I would like to do more. I've done a lot of museum visits in the East, but not really any field work. So I've done for my PhD, I did several museum visits throughout the East. So to the Carnegie especially, but also to the American Museum of Natural History in New York. So visiting collections is also pretty awesome. For the second question, I would say one of the things that seems to continue to get kind of repeated that's not true, or like a weird bit of false info about dinos that just won't go away is the idea that they were kind of cold-blooded or slow or not very successful, which is a really interesting misconception. They were very active, dynamic animals. They were incredibly diverse. They were very, very successful for millions and millions of years, much longer than we've been on the planet. So it's always struck me as kind of funny that we use dinosaurs like a euphemism for like outdated or not very good. Because yeah, they were really active, really dynamic, very successful animals.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you so much. Because, and I don't know, maybe I can squeeze one more little tiny question. Is there anything you ever do with
Sure.
like the eggs or like DNA? I mean, if they ever think of, not that they bring them back, but I'm just saying, what is the biggest research that you would get from the dinosaurs? Not only their history and stuff, but what's the future for that?
Well, I'll answer that in two different ways. So from some of the coolest research that I think we can do with bones or eggs is to cut them up. So I am very interested in what's called histology. It's the study of tissues, and you can have modern histology. Doctors use histology to diagnose disease. They look at tissues under the microscope. But paleohistology is looking at fossil tissues, and that's what I do. So you can look at the tissue of a fossil egg or the tissue of a fossil bone, and you can actually learn a lot of information about the physiology of the animal. You can learn from an egg, you can learn what kind of environment it might have been nesting in, what kind of dinosaur it was. From the bone itself, you can learn how quickly the animal was growing, how old or mature it was when it died. Just really fascinating information that you can't really get by looking at the outside of the bone only. So I think that's really cool. If we're talking about DNA, it's not really a viable product in dinosaurs that you're going to find and be able to use. DNA doesn't last very long. And so in the fossil record, it's incredibly degraded by the time you're looking at a dinosaur. It's just like bits and pieces that aren't terribly useful. So I know a lot of people talk about de-extinction. That is more plausible with ice age animals, but then there's also some ethical about the ecosystems they evolved in don't really exist anymore, or if they do exist, we need to preserve them for the animals that are there now. It's a neat thought experiment, but it's not something that's very practical in action, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and thanks for the time.
No problem.
Sorry about doing that. I was doing double duties as a host, looking at messages coming in. I need a co-host. I need a co-host. I was trying to Chris, my wife, to help out, but we can't get her Twitter to accept co-host. I think it's because she's got the only person she follows is Bunsen. I'm not sure. I have a question before we go to one that came through direct message. Do paleontologists throw down with each other about what their favorite dinosaur is? Like, do you get into epic battles with other paleontologists? Because the fish people do all the time on Twitter.
I know. Yeah,
they lose their mind.
Bird.
Like they go bananas.
They do. They really do. It's funny. I would say in a very joking manner that's all very well intentioned, yes. It does happen. I would say there's a funny kind of playful animosity between mammal people and dinosaur people and fossil fish people, kind of like you see between the modern fish and bird biologists. It's all in good fun, but yeah, a lot of the non-dinosaur paleontologists have, a little bit of a humorous chip on the shoulder, rightfully so, because when people hear the word paleontologist, they assume that you must study dinosaurs. And if you study dinosaurs, that's probably really frustrating. So I can totally understand where that beef started.
Oh, okay. Because I like to debate different types of dinosaurs. I don't know near as much as I know a fraction about dinosaurs. And I think I mentioned my favorite dinosaur is the Ankylosaurus. I just love that little armored guy. Well, he's not so little, about the size of a Volkswagen, right?
Yeah, some of them were about that size. Some are bigger. Yeah, they're amazing. My friend Victoria Arbor, Dr. Victoria Arbor, she is fantastic, and she is an ankylosaur specialist.
What?
She is very cool, and she is on Twitter.
No
So
way. Really?
yeah, people should definitely follow her. I'm pretty sure you can find her with her actual name, Victoria Arbor.
Victoria
She's
Arbor.
she's over at the Royal BC Museum now.
What?
And she's phenomenal. Her and my advisor, David Evans, named and described the new ankylosaur Zool.
Oh, sorry, what?
Did you see the new ankylosaur a couple of years ago, Zool, that came out?
Zool? No.
Yeah. You should definitely look that up. Zool, it's named after the Ghostbusters character, and that's a really excellent new specimen that they described. We just had a pretty awesome exhibit on it at the Royal Ontario Museum
Cool.
a little over a year ago, I think.
I've got my little ankylosaur stuffy right here. It's really, I've got a little stuffy of an ankylosaurus I got from the Royal Trail Museum. Okay, I'm sorry.
They're cool. They're really cool dinosaurs.
Sorry, we have questions. Amy, through direct message, can't get access to a mic. Amy was wondering about Basil. If Basil has to answer the call of nature, can she get up from her settle?
So this is going to depend on what we're doing. Usually, so this is part of, in the service dog handler relationship, we have to both be really, really tuned into each other's needs. So for Basil, since she was a little puppy, I have actually worked really hard on teaching her specific commands to go potty. And that's pretty common with service dogs. So when I take her on a walk, we are pretty pearl. She gets free runs, she gets lots of free time, but we do a lot of practice with structured walks where we're walking on a sidewalk or we're walking even through a park. And if we're doing a structured walk, she's not really supposed to stop and sniff or go to the bathroom or anything like that. We are like walking intentionally. She's focused on me. And then I'll give her a command for when she can go play and be free and do whatever she wants. Or if we're just doing a structured walk, I give her a command to go have a break, and she goes and does it and comes right back over to me, and then we keep walking. Just to kind of get that really structured routine down, because when you're working, you don't really have a lot of time for kind of surprise bathroom needs. So it's my job to make sure I exercise her and get her all her like bathroom time and everything. And then we go work, and I kind of time it out so that I take breaks around when I think she'll probably need a break. If she's feeling sick, that is also a time when she's allowed to get up. If she's in a place or a settle where she's supposed to stay, she's allowed to get up and let me know if she's like, I really need to go. So she can tell me that, or she can alert me. It's flexible that way. And I just try to keep an eye on what I think her needs probably are and watch her body so that I make sure I'm not accidentally making her wait too long or anything like that.
That's a good point. Like a lot of dogs, unless they are sick, they have a pretty, when they need to go to the washroom because they kind of have their times during the day. So
exactly. And she does have, we've taught her to ring a bell when she needs to go out. So she has like a pretty purposeful demeanor about her. When she's decided she needs to go out, she'll will tell me. So unless it's an emergency, she just hangs out and does what I need her to do.
See, we did that with Beaker, and it was adorable. She picked up on it and caught it, and it was great. And then it became a disaster because she just wanted to go out all the time because she
Yep.
So she would sit at the front door and ringy dingy dingy and hit it. And then we talked to Shar, and she's like, well, you dumb. You need to take the bell away and only have it out there kind of when you think she needs to use the washroom. So and we're like, oh yeah. We
ran into the same problem. They get really demandy with the bell. And our solution was, my husband named it boring potty break. So anytime she rang the bell, the only thing she got to do was get on her leash and go to the sidewalk to walk up and down near some grassy area. And that's all we did for like, it was like minutes that she got while we walk around. If she went to the bathroom, great. If she didn't, she just got a very, very boring, tiny walk.
And then the novelty wore off. Yeah.
She stopped
That's-
seeing it as playtime.
Oh, that's cute. So I don't have any more direct messages. If you have a question for Jade about dinosaurs or about Basil, please ask to speak or send me a message. If not, I've got a couple follow-up questions we can keep going to. I'm just going to check my messages right now. Came in from Carly. Hi, I have a question for the space. I visited Sue the dino back when I was a preteen and was wondering how big of an impact the field of dinosaurs and paleontology. Is that the T-Rex? Is that what that person's asking?
Yeah. Sue the T-Rex is a pretty famous specimen. I would say it had quite a big impact. That's a good question. In the paleo community itself, it had a pretty big impact, but I would say even more so in kind of popular awareness of dinosaur excavations and specimens. Sue was a big deal. I definitely get a lot of people asking me about Sue specifically. It's one of the few dinosaurs that a lot of people know by name, like not just the species name, but the actual name of the specimen. We nickname a lot of our specimens, but Sue is really widely known. But yeah, I would say it has pretty big impact.
You know what? I think I follow Sue. I think the Sue has an account on Twitter.
Yeah, they do. They're hilarious. It's an excellent account.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Sue the T-Rex.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They do have an account. They're really sarcastic, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe share. Here, this is a weird one. Like sometimes their tweets are just like, there's one I just shared to the nest up top. I don't know if people can see it. Something about arguing with the moon. Anyways.
Oh yeah, they're pretty funny.
Jamie, you have a question. Go ahead.
What I was going to ask Jade is how related are the Australian dinosaurs to the American ones?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good question. So I mostly study North American dinosaurs, but I think the basic answer to what you're asking is they're fairly related, because when dinosaurs were first starting to diversify, the continents were quite close together, and then they started to diverge. So you do get some really unique dinosaurs on different continents later into the Cretaceous, because the continents have started to separate. But earlier on, they were fairly connected. So you get the same general dinosaur groups. There's like the big three: theropods, sauropods. So that's the Sauriscia, and then the ornithischians. So there's two major groups. I misspoke: the Saurischians and the ornithischians. But you get kind of all those major groups in most places, because they started to diversify in the Triassic when the continents were all mashed together. And then things start to diverge. So later in time, more recently, I guess, in time, as you get towards the Cretaceous and late Cretaceous, you do start to see a lot of divergence. So yeah, you get some pretty unique dinosaurs in different parts of the world. In between North America and Asia, there's a lot of overlap, because there's actually some faunal interchange. So species going across from one place to another. But in places like Australia, there's a bit less of that. So you end up with fairly unique dinosaur fauna. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I don't study those specific fauna, so it's a little tough. But
no, it's all good. That's fascinating. That supercontinent, is that Pangaea you're talking about?
Yeah. So originally in the Triassic, you have Pangaea, and then you end up getting it split with Gondwana and Laurentia and a few other subcontinent or bits there.
I have a super nerdy T-shirt that says "Reunite Pangaea." Like it's like one of those.
Yeah, I've seen that. I actually really want one of those.
Oh, you do?
Like that? Yeah.
There was before we started buying merch. That's basically what we have now as our own T-shirts. But anyways, I think there's a website called Snorg Tees, and they have like super nerdy stuff like that. That's where I got all my nerdy T-shirts from.
Awesome.
Okay, question came in from somebody. You mentioned that birds today are the closest relative that we have to dinosaurs. Is there one specific breed, in quotation marks, because I don't know if that's a type of bird, like if you have breeds of bird, uh,
Yeah.
that would give us a good idea of what a dinosaur was like back in the day? Like, what is there a bird kind of like the crocodile that hasn't changed a heck of a lot? Is that a question that makes sense? I don't know.
That does make sense. So the thing is that I think this might have been a good answer actually for the misconceptions. So birds and non-avian dinosaurs, the dinosaurs that were not birds, lived side by side for quite a long time. So birds evolved sometime in the Jurassic. So they're around for millions of years along with non-avian dinosaurs. So you have feathered theropods that look and act very bird-like. And then you also have actual birds at some time in evolutionary history, which is really cool. I think people imagine them being like fairly separate, but they were not. So early birds were probably a bit more akin to kind of like waterfowl, ducks, and also like grouse and pheasant like birds. So some of the early birds were more like that. If you want to imagine kind of those types of animals. But then we also did have like these small kind of not quite songbird like, but maybe more songbird like birds in the Jurassic as well, and then onto the Cretaceous too. So they're a lot like modern birds. There was a whole group of birds that existed and actually did go extinct along with all the non-avian dinosaurs that were really, really different. They're pretty cool. They're called the Enantiornithians. It's a mouthful, but basically it means opposite bird. And they had teeth. So these were birds
That's terrifying.
birds with teeth, like true teeth, not just projections on the bill like some birds can have. But yeah, and they were very bizarre, and they went extinct along with the non-avian dinosaurs. So I'm not terribly sad that they don't exist today, because that kind of scares me.
Well, I think Buster would give Beaker a better run for her money if Buster had like little sharp teeth.
Yeah, probably.
Because he was trying to, like, during the attack where he just about ended, had his life ended.
Oh no.
He was trying to like scratch at her with his talons, and it was doing nothing, right? Like that's not a defense against the dog.
Yeah.
But little sharp bitey teeth might.
Yeah, that would have changed the equation.
Hey Jade, I've got a question myself, and I've been pondering this, and I could Google it, but you're here. When you say non-avian dinosaurs, like what are some non-avian dinosaurs for people to kind of like picture?
Excellent question. So everything except birds. Non-avian dinosaur means everything from T-Rex to Triceratops to an oviraptor or Stegosaurus. Any of the classic dinosaurs that you kind of picture in your mind that aren't the birds. Yeah. So the duckbills, all of those sauropods, like Diplodocus and all the long neck dinosaurs, all of those.
So okay, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Non-avian dinosaurs, did they become birds, or there was another type of bird dinosaur? You know what I'm just confused.
So non-avian dinosaur is like a big group. It's just a really clumsy saying all the dinosaurs except birds.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so it's kind of like birds are dinosaurs, but not all dinosaurs are birds. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So bird is a subset of dinosaur, and then it gets a little awkward when we're trying to talk about dinosaurs that are not birds. So we've just kind of called them non-avian dinosaurs. So it's just like everything else that's not birds. So birds are descended directly from theropod dinosaurs, pretty closely actually related to the group that I study. So there's like this nesting hierarchy of names, right, in science. So like our species is Homo sapiens, the genus is Homo. There's a larger group that contains that, and eventually you get to like primates, which contains us and all other primates. So dinosaurs has a bunch of different categories in it. So there's the saurischians and the ornithischians. Those are like two big groups. If you look even closer in saurischians, you get major groups like theropods, and then you also have sauropods. If you dive in and look closer at theropods, you have lots of different groups in there. And that when you get closer and closer to birds, you get into a group that's called maniraptorans. And those are like troodon and oviraptors and velociraptor, things like that. And then eventually, if you zoom in even closer, you get this little group that's birds. That's not very little, but in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay. Yeah,
I love
hopefully
it.
that made sense.
No, it's good. Nancy, hi. Did you have a question? Hi, Dr. Nancy von Meyer. I've given you, you just have to unmute yourself. That's all. Okay, maybe Nancy's having some problems. David, go ahead. I'll give you the ability to speak. And somebody sent a direct message. So David, you've got your question. Go ahead. Just got to unmute yourself. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, David, hi.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were still on. I thought you were still on the previous person you were attempting.
I know something's up with Nancy's mic or something. But
okay, good. All right.
Oh. Yeah, go ahead.
My question was the discussion previously just now about the non-avian dinosaurs versus the avians. Is there anything around today that's kind of close to the non-avian dinosaurs?
To the non-avian dinosaurs,
Like gators?
That's a good question. So alligators are a like distant cousin. So you have if we're talking just about the nested groups of the names, how we name things in science. If you zoom out a bigger picture, there's a group that contains dinosaurs, and that bigger group is called archosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
And crocodilians, alligators, and crocs are in that bigger archosaur group, but are not dinosaurs. So they're kind of outside of Dinosauria as like a cousin. But around today, similar to the non-avian dinosaurs, I think your closest thing is a bird.
Okay.
At least to the theropods. If you're thinking about, if you're thinking about like the duckbills, the hadrosaur dinosaurs, they might have been actually kind of similar to some of the hoofed animals that move around today in herds that are like fairly active. So we do think that they were social. They were pretty active. They, reared their young. So I think actually, if you picture them acting sort of like we see more gregarious mammals acting today, that's not that's just similar to what we think they were probably like. So some of those herding animals might be similar to some of the herbivore dinosaurs.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Oh, and by the way, when you first started talking about that cassowary thing, I was snickering because I was thinking of Beaker and Buster at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Cassowary is a good analog for what some of the theropods might have been like. Cassowaries are scary and rather dangerous.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, David. Nancy's having, Dr. Nancy von Meyer's having trouble with her mic. So her question is, has global warming impacted discoveries that you've made or discoveries in paleontology?
That is a really good question. I am not positive. I'm sure that it has. There's lots of areas of paleontology that I don't specialize in. So there's paleoclimate studies. There's paleo-mammal lists and all sorts of other avenues of paleontology that I don't think I could really do for that question. But I will say on a personal note, something I have noticed is field seasons are getting more difficult because of the extreme weather conditions and because of fire. So my last field season was in 2017, and it was before my health got really bad, but I actually did have quite a hard time because of the fires that were happening out in Alberta around that time and in Montana as well. So that is an impact on us as we're actually trying to dig, and we actually had to leave our camp a few times because it was too hot and too smoky. And so it kind of changed when we think about setting up our field season. It gets harder to predict. If you think about organizing a field season, we're going out there and we're staying out in the field camping. That requires a lot of logistics. So we need to figure out how we're going to organize food and equipment and people and getting everyone there and setting up. And when the weather becomes really difficult to kind of predict what sort of the summer is going to work well, it's pretty difficult because it's a time and money intensive thing to set up. So in that way, I've seen the direct impacts just in my 10 years or so doing this. I've definitely seen a shift where it's getting harder to plan our field seasons.
This summer in Alberta, woof, you wouldn't want to be in July for about 3 weeks. Not only was it hot Sahara in places, which is just mind-boggling. There's a there was what was the town in BC that burnt down? But it was almost 50 degrees Celsius for a week.
Yeah.
In this place in BC, that's that's incredibly hot for Canada. And then
really
everything was on fire. Yeah, we drove through a forest fire. It was
I
bananas.
saw that.
It was bananas. Yeah. Well, that was thanks for answering that question.
Yeah.
We're kind of at the end of Spaces, but I thought saving this one for the end. Danielle wanted to let you know. She just wrote a little note. I want to thank Jade for talking about Danlos. Did I say that right? That's your disability.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how she's been able to train Basil to help in all sorts of ways. I've been recently been given a diagnosis of hypermobility, and I'm learning a lot about it. I didn't know there were service dogs that could help with that, and it was really inspiring to hear all that Jade continues to do. I love the dinosaur talk, and then smiley face with cool shades.
That makes me so happy. Thank you for that, Danielle, and also thank you for reading that. Yeah, that makes me really happy. That is one of the biggest reasons that I talk a lot about my disability and service dog tasks and things like that. Is that that's not something I see talked about very often. So it was a very, very lonely road at first, and I'm just hoping that if I talk about it a lot, maybe it'll be less lonely for people who are getting diagnosed, if they at least can find someone out there talking about all this.
It's our pleasure through the podcast and Spaces to highlight things you don't see, right? But if you don't see it, you don't see yourself in science, and that's why I'm just so glad that you talked to us on the podcast and you agreed to be on Spaces, and in short notice too. I actually didn't have anybody lined up for today, and you were so gracious and jumping to fill that spot. So thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. We appreciate having an opportunity to talk about these things, and you're exactly right. The if you don't see it, it's very hard to imagine yourself in that space. And that's a big reason that I do what I do and try to advocate alongside also doing paleo. Try not to shy away from talking about disability because somewhere around a quarter of the population has some sort of disability. And that's a lot of people. And I feel like we just don't see very much discussion of that, considering the proportion of people. It's a little surprising. So maybe we can change that.
We just need to talk. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you for guest on Spaces today. There's no more questions coming in through direct message, and our time is up. Thank you again to Jade. Make sure you follow Basil, and Jade is O is for oviraptor.